Now, joining us to unpack everything from that announcement, we have with us Dr. Jung-yeop from the Sejong Institute. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So the third Inter-Korean Summit date has been set, September 18th to the 20th, 2 nights and 3 days in Pyongyang. Let me get your initial reaction from that announcement.
So for North Korea's accepting South Korean special envoy to Pyongyang and agreeing to set up a date for the third summit in Pyongyang is the most positive aspect of the visit by this time, by special envoy this time, because we have to consider the context where this special envoy's visit took place, because of the very recent cancellation of Secretary Pompeo's trip to Pyongyang, and it was caused by North Korean letter, which was believed to be not nice to the United States. So there was a concern that North Korea might deviate from this dialogue. And we confirmed that North Korea is still interested in dialogue, and so the special envoy's visit and setting up the date is very important in that regard.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the politics, let me just first ask, 3 days, 2 nights, that's quite a long time. What is the schedule, do you think, could be like? Why 3 days?
So there are a lot of agendas that two leaders have to discuss, and it's not only for two leaders, but also the expanded staff and advisors should gather together to discuss many things in detail. For example, that they are not going to discuss only about nuclear weapons, but there are a lot of issues regarding North and South Korea economic cooperation, like railroad project and the forest issues, and also from the previous visit by Korean president to Pyongyang, they together watch the performances from the North Korean theater. So they are going to not only show the hard substances, but also going to show some soft images that they share some time by watching the show and the performances and some ordinary life of the North Korean cities.
Yes, North Korea do like their pomp and circumstance. Let's go back to that, the briefing by Chung. So one of the most striking revelations from that briefing was Chung's conversations with Kim Jong-un that he revealed. Now, Kim Jong-un not only said that he reaffirmed his commitment to denuclearize the regime, he said to have expressed frustration at why the international community didn't really accept the moves that he'd made so far, such as shutting down the Punggye-ri nuclear test site and the dismantling of one of the missile engine test sites as well. He said he hopes these steps can be recognized by the international community. But critics and observers would say those moves were very surface, not particularly significant. How seriously should we take Kim Jong-un's comments?
So I think that is why making an agreement is important in this kind of diplomacies. So North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said that he did many things out of his goodwill to show that he's really going to denuclearize North Korea. But the thing is that he never had the agreement with the President Trump that what would he get in exchange for what he's going to do. So from the North Korea's point of view, they did very nice things that they want to get some equivalent things from the United States and international community. But from the U.S. point of view, that it's not that U.S. demanded for North Korea to do it, and United States did not promise anything in the agreement. So in the future, if two countries smoothly continue the negotiation and smoothly achieve the denuclearization of the North Korea, they have to make an agreement that what kind of action should be exchanged for what kind of response. So I think that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said he's frustrated. Then I think that the better way to correct their frustration is to make an agreement in detail with the United States in the future.
So you're saying the devil's in the detail. For example, Kim Jong-un might be frustrated, but then the US, also from Kim Jong-un's side, Kim Jong-un has given these things, and it seems like the US haven't given anything in return. Can the US keep demanding from North Korea to keep giving more without having a set plan in place?
So from the US point of view, that suspension of the joint military drills between the allies are much more valuable than shutting down of Punggye-ri and the missile test site. So if they didn't make agreement in advance, how the interpretation of each other's action should be, is always going to be different. So I think if they didn't make like agreement in advance before they took any actions, then this kind of conflict is going to happen again in the future. So that's why I emphasize the making the agreement.
Now, the issue of the declaration to formally end the Korean War was also addressed in the press briefing as well. Now, Chung said Kim expressed understanding that the end of the Korean War is a separate issue from the South Korea-US alliance and the US forces being in South Korea. Now, this seems to be sending a message that Kim will not demand the removal of US presence from South Korea in denuclearization talks. How significant is this?
So we really hope that Kim's comment on this issue is really sincere out of his conscience. But the thing is that he said that his initial measures, like shutting down at Punggye-ri, is not appreciated by the United States. That means United States did not give what's worse of shutting down Punggye-ri and other measures that he takes. And also he emphasized that this ending the hostile relationship is by like signing the peace treaty or the declaration to end the war. And he mentioned that South Korean government and the United States should put much efforts in achieving this. So I think that the United States is now hesitant to give the declaration to end the war to North Korea because we don't know yet what kind of things that North Korea is doing in return for the declaration to end the war. So I think that the best way to resolve this kind of conflict is to make an agreement between two countries that what benefits and what responses the U.S. is going to provide in return for the ending the war officially. And North Korea is going to demand U.S. for the declaration to end the war. And unless they make an agreement, we are going to keep hearing on these issues.
How do you think the U.S. will react to today's announcement?
So I think that in general, U.S. is going to welcome because in general, Kim Jong-un said that he reaffirmed his interest in denuclearization. Also, during the Q&A session of today's presser by Mr. Jung-yeop, that North Korea is willing to denuclearize within the first term of the President Trump, which is by the end of 2020. So I think it's a very significant message that to be delivered to the President Trump. But the thing is that we have to agree on how to achieve the denuclearization by 2020. So if now the issue is that how United States and North Korea is reach an agreement to achieve the denuclearization by 2020.
Kim Jong-un is said to have expressed that he has a good relationship with Trump, which kind of echoes what Trump has said in recent weeks as well. He also stressed that he wants to end the 70-year hostile relationship with the US. Does this at least suggest that the North Korea does want to keep trying to work towards a different future for the two nations?
So I think there are two aspects. First is that two sides have criticized each other's behavior, but they don't criticize each other's leaders. So North Korea has criticized like Secretary Pompeo and NSC's advisor John Bolton, but North Korea did not criticize President Trump for this stopped talk between two countries. And also, same goes for the President Trump. Even though President Trump canceled the visit by Secretary Pompeo very recently, but he said that he would talk to the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, and he thought highly of him. So I think that two countries are not giving up the possibility of continuing the discussion. And the second aspect is that North Korean government might be thinking that dealing directly with President Trump might be much better than dealing with the Secretary Pompeo or other staff. Because from the experience of the June 12th summit in Singapore, I think North Korean experience told them that it might be easy for them to strike a deal with President Trump rather than like working group members.
Another point that came out of the press briefing earlier today was that Chung revealed that they had agreed with North Korea to open the joint liaison office before the summit in 2 weeks' time. Now, there's been some controversial, contentious issues with that liaison office, with the US possibly having unhappy with South Korea pushing for it for so much. But Seoul must have gotten the green light from the US to make this agreement, no?
So now we have less than 2 weeks before the third summit in Pyongyang. That means we only have like 13 days window for opening the liaison office in Kaesong. So as you just said that there's a reservation from the United States on reopening the Kaesong, not only for the possible violation of the sanctions on North Korea, but also that U.S. argue that improving the inter-Korean relations should go at the same pace with the denuclearization process. So I think that Korean government is going to put much effort on persuading U.S. to support the opening the liaison office, but I don't know at this juncture that what kind of responses that we are going to get from the U.S. government.
And finally, let's look ahead to the Inter-Korean summit. So the date has been set now, and this Chung-yeong's visit, so his visit to Pyongyang, I call it like an appetizer to the main course. The main course is going to be in Pyongyang in 2 weeks' time, but there's going to be a lot of pressure, I feel, on President Moon Jae-in to come back with something very substantial because he has to move on from what he agreed in the last 2 summits. How difficult will that be, and what should we be looking out for?
So when at the high-level talks between North and South Korea in August, and when they agreed to have a summit in September, actually the atmosphere was much more positive than now. Secretary Pompeo's visit was almost scheduled, and there was a rumor that President Xi Jinping of China is going to visit Pyongyang. Then we are going to have a summit between 2 leaders, and that means that there would be some progress in denuclearization, and there would be some progress in international community supporting improving the international relations. That give much more chance for 2 leaders to agreement both in denuclearization and improving inter-Korean relations. But without improving the denuclearization process, because the talks between U.S. and North Korea has been stopped, so it's very difficult politically for South Korean government to push forward only in the area of improving inter-Korean relations. So if South Korea, at the third summit, we ended up having a deal on inter-Korean relations, it's going to be criticized, and there's international community's pressure that without having progress on denuclearization, then it's not going to be supported by international community in improving inter-Korean relations. So in the third summit, it's a hard task for the South Korean government to make progress in denuclearization.
Exactly, because this is an issue that has to be dealt with between North Korea and the US, essentially, doesn't it?
Yeah, so, but the issue is that now two countries, North Korea and the United States, had stopped talking since the cancellation of Secretary Pompeo's visit. So I think from South Korean government's point of view, that it's very important to facilitate and reinstate the talks between the 2 governments. So I think before the summit in September 18th, that South Korean government is going to put much efforts in persuading 2 sides to resume the talks on denuclearization. What would
look like success for President Moon after the 3rd summit? What would he have to come back with?
So I think that not only in the inter-Korean relations, but also having derived the messages from North Korean leader that he's going to officially engage in United States with regard to the negotiation for the denuclearization. So as I mentioned in the previous questions, that if South Korean government facilitate reaching a deal and agreement between the United States and the North Korea, everyone would welcome that kind of efforts by South Korean government.
Well, that's what we have time for. Thank you for coming in and sharing us your thoughts.
Thank you.